Hi Subboxers, it's Heather with Running with Scissors, and today we are going to do the tutorial on May's subscription box. And let's see what's in the box. So we have this cute little Hello Summer sign. It's a watermelon sign. And it is a 12-inch sign. And it is all laser cut. You'll have a variety of paints in here. We've given you a green apple, shamrock, marshmallow, no drama, and ink, including a flat brush, which you should have plenty of these laying around. A couple of zip ties, a couple of lengths of ribbon. Now your ribbon may not look exactly like my ribbon here. As we are doing the tutorial, we are still waiting on the rest of the supplies to come in, so yours may not match exactly, but I had to use what I had in the studio for the demo. You have a super glue tube, of course. You have some painting sponges and wedges, and you have a length of jute. You might want to have some scissors ready, and of course always baby wipes ready. And we are going to get started. Okay, so first you're gonna have to decide how you want to paint this, what kinds of, what colors you want to use and where you want to put those colors. You have all kinds of options. We tried to give you a good mix of colors so you can do whatever you want to do. However, I had a vision for this sign when I thought about it initially for the sub box, so that is how I am going to paint it. Quite often you will see black and white to checkered marks along the edges, and we've certainly done watermelon and lemon signs like that in the past. But for this particular one, I had the idea of 2 shades of green. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do 2 shades of green here on my watermelon rind, like a traditional watermelon. And I may mix my white and my red together to give me some pink. But for the most part, I am going to do this just like a traditional watermelon. So to get myself started here, I'm going to paint my whole entire sign white. Now there's 2 reasons I'm going to do this. One, I want this part up here, the top part, I want that white. And the second thing is green, especially our lighter shade of green, like our green apple, shows up better when it has a foundation of white underneath it. So I am just going to make my life easier, and I'm going to paint my whole entire sign white. Now I'm not going to do it very, very heavy because I want to be able to see my score lines to make painting the stripes a little bit easier. So I'm going to take my yellow sponge and dip it in my white paint, and I'm going to go ahead and just wipe it on my sign. In a very, very thin coat. My coat is very thin, so I can see my wood grain through it. You can see that on the camera, that it's not that thick. I do like to go around the outside edges first. Now, for some reason, I stopped because I have that score line there, so it just made me want to follow that line. But you could go all the way around the edges first. Keeping that nice and light so I can still see those score marks. And it is a wonderfully sunny evening here as I am doing this tutorial, and I'm sitting sort of in front of our door, and in spite of having that very dark tint on it, the sun is shining right in my face. It's glorious. I'm not complaining. It's been a very long winter, and we have not had any spring yet, maybe 1 or 2 days. So I am anxious for the warmth. Okay, so there's my first coat of white. Now on this lower half, which is the rind part, I am not going to put another coat of white on it. That one coat is plenty for my green to pop on top of it, but I will have to put another coat on the top because that is going to be the final color of the backer board there. So as soon as that dries, I'm going to put a second coat on that. So I will be back in just a second with the dry board and we can start our second coat. Okay, our board is dry now, so we are going to put the second coat, and we're only going to put that on the top part of the sign. Okay, while we wait for this to dry, I'm just going to set it out of the way, and I'm going to move on to some other things while we wait for that to dry, and so we can get started on the rind. Now, I'm going to paint my seeds black. Now, if you have some painter's tape or some masking tape, you can take a piece of tape and you can roll it up and you can stick it down on your table. And then you can stick all these little pieces to it and paint them, and they won't go all over the place while you paint them. They will stay put. Now, I also have these guys. There's 6 or so of them, and that is the watermelon juice. I'm going to paint those as well. I'm going to stick those on the other side of my tape. And then, of course, we have the Hello Summer, and you can do the same thing. You can just take a piece of tape and roll it up, stick it down, and then just stick all your pieces to that. Now, when I have a little more delicate pieces, like the little swirlies in the Hello, I try not to stick the whole entire word to the tape because I don't want to make it too difficult to tear off. I just stick a portion of it down so it will stay. So, like I said, my watermelon is going to be a traditional watermelon, so I'm going to paint my watermelon, the fruit of it, I'm going to paint red. So I am going to paint the juice red as well. Now we paint with the wide end of the white sponge. We dip our sponge into the paint, and then we make sure we don't have excess paint on it by dabbing off on our tablecloth or pizza box. And then we just do a pouncing method on our wood pieces till they're covered, and then we will just let them dry before we put a second coat on them. I'm sitting here debating how I want to do this. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the Hello black. Now remember, I decided to paint the backer portion of my sign white. And that is where these guys are going. These words, they are going on that backer portion that's white. But let's see, we have 6 letters in the word summer. And I think I might change the shades of my reds and my greens to make all different colors for summer. So let's do this. I'm going to take my wedge and I'm going to cut it in half, right down the middle, just like that. So I have a couple of pieces because I want to be able to change that color. So once again, all right. So I'm going to take my red paint and I'm going to first paint the sprays from the juices, the watermelon fruit. I'm going to pounce those red. And then while I got the red out, I'm going to paint my S with this dark red as well. Just like that. I'm going to take, and my U I'm going to make, let's see, I gotta think about this. If I make my U pink and my M an even lighter shade of pink, then I can do my E, my next M. I'm going to do this M in the darker green. Now you could put a base coat of white on your letter as well if you want to make your green pop a little bit. It's not so important with this shamrock as much as it is with the lighter shade. So that's going to be this E. Let's move this over. I'm going to put a coat of white paint on the E just so I can get that green to really, really pop on that. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the R. The R is kind of moving off camera, but I know that it's still in there. Okay, so just a quick shade of, or a coat of white on there. Let's go ahead and get another coat of black on our pieces because they are dry. And then this will be our final coat, second and final coat on our black pieces. All right. Now let's put another coat on our red pieces. That would be our watermelon spray and our letter S. Okay. Now my U, I am going to make just a little bit lighter shade of red. Not quite a light pink, just a lighter pink. So I'm going to take just a little bit of white and I'm going to put it right on my table cover out of camera angle so you can't really see it, but you can use your pizza box for that. And I'm going to put just a little bit of red right next to it so that I can mix them together and I'm not polluting the containers of paint. Okay, now to get the pink that I want, I'm only going to mix the tiniest bit of white in it. I want more red than white because I do want it to be a darker pink. And you only need like a dime size amount of each color on your table surface. Let's see if I can show you without messing this up too much. What I did there. See it right there on the surface? I just have a little tiny bit of red, which was right over there, and a little tiny bit of white. Okay, so let's go back here. And now I've got that color pink that I wanted, which is like our flamingo pink. And I'm gonna coat my M. I'm gonna coat my U. I got my M on accident, but that's all right. And then we're gonna let that dry for a second. But while we let that dry, we're going to mix, actually, we're going to put a second coat on our letter M, which is the darkest green. Okay. So there's that. Now that is essentially done. So now the same thing, I want to take I want to lighten this screen up just a little bit. Now you have two choices here at this point. You can use your white, just like we did with the pink, or you can use both of your greens, and you would just put a little bit of each of those on your paper plate or your pizza box, just a little dime size amount. And then you would mix a very little of the darker green with the lighter green to lighten that shade up just a bit. Let me show you that. Right there on my table, you can see darker green here, the lighter green here, and then I just mixed them over here to get that little bit of a different shade.
Now in just a second, you are going to notice that my M is painted green. This is incorrect, and I am going to fix it in the next couple of frames. So just pretend that you never saw it.
Lighter shade of green. Okay, that's gonna need 2 coats, so we're gonna let that dry. And while we let that dry, okay, so now we are going to paint the first M of our word in a little bit lighter pink shade than we painted the U. So I'm just going to take the sponge that I was using, and I'm gonna add a little bit more white to it, right on my table surface still in that same spot. And I'm just mixing in more of my white paint that was already on my table. And then I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna paint that M. Now that's gonna need 2 coats. So we're gonna let that dry. While we let that dry, we're gonna come back and we're gonna put a second coat of paint on our E, which is the mid shade of green. All right, and now we got our R left, and our R is the one that I want to be the lightest shade of green. So now I'm just going to take a little bit of white on my tablecloth, just a little, less than a dime size. I'm gonna take the same sponge I'm using, or been using, I'm gonna dip it into that white, and I'm gonna pounce it just a couple of times. Then I'm gonna come over to the R, and let me see if I can get it in the camera just a little bit more. And I'm going to cover the R with that light shade of green. Okay, and that's it for that. Now it will need a second coat, so we're gonna let it dry for a second. We're gonna put the second and final coat on our very light pink M. As you can see, I'm getting a bit of the darker pink in there from my sponge when I pounce, but I'm just gonna keep fading or blending it in, and no one will be the wiser. Okay, so at this point, all we have left is one more coat on our R, which is our lightest green. Okay, and that is it for our words. So I'm just going to gently pull up my hello here, and I'm going to move it to the side, off to the side. I'm just gonna pick up my tape and move all of that over as well, and just let it dry finish drying right on the tape. Most of my stuff is dry, but a couple of the letters are still a little wet. All right, now we're gonna bring the sign back in front of us, the backer board, and we are going to start painting this. So I'm going to paint the inside first, the fruit part or the pulp part of the watermelon, and I'm going to use my straight red. I am going to use my flat brush though to make sure that I get close to the outside edge here in a nice clean line. Now if you want, you can use some tape, and you can run a line of tape right along that score line, just like that. or you can just freehand it straight across. That's totally up to you and how well that you do there. Freehanding. I know some of you aren't the greatest at it. It should not be too difficult, but some tape will work in a pinch. Now you will have to freehand around the round part of it though, but you'll be okay. So I'm just gonna get a line in here with my paintbrush, and yep, you can use your white wedge at this point as well. But I do have to go around the outside edge of it with my brush because I want to get it as close as I can. Here's a score line for you to follow. Just dip your brush in the paint and run your brush along that line. You don't want a ton of paint on your brush because you'll leave a line of paint on the edge, and you don't want that. So just do just a bit of paint and pull it until you run out of paint. Now you don't have to do the colors that we do. If you want your watermelon pink, you can make your watermelon pink. If you want your rind black and white, you can do your rind black and white. If you want the background pink instead of white, you can do that. Maybe you want it green. You should have enough paint to deviate if you would like to deviate. There should be plenty. We're pretty generous with our paint. Now that I've got my outline done, I'm just going to come in with my white wedge, and I'm going to pounce in the inside part here to get this watermelon covered. And I am going to try to get as close to the edges as I can, just so the coverage looks uniform. Okay, that's gonna need a second to dry. So we're going to let that dry before we put another coat on it. If we put another coat on it now, all it's going to do is pull the paint off. All right, so let's let that dry for a second. Okay, now I am going to put my second coat on. And same as I did the first time, I'm gonna run my paintbrush around the outside edge. I'm going to go ahead and use my sponge along this edge here with my tape, but for the outside edge, I am just gonna use my brush real quick and just get a quick coat in there. Nice thin coat. I don't want it very thick, even on my second coat here. I wanna keep my paint thickness uniform. I like to put a dab of paint on there and then chase it with my brush to smooth it all out very quickly. there's my outline. And I'm going to put my brush in my cleaner because I am done with my red on my brush, and I want to clean my brush out so that I can use it for my next colors. Okay, there is our second coat, and we're gonna let that dry. Okay, we are all dry now, so I am going to start painting this down here. Now I am going to paint this right here, the lighter shade of green. So to save myself some trouble, I'm going to paint this whole entire thing that light shade of green, okay? Because these alternate stripes I can go over with the darker green right over top of the lighter green, and it will just make it a little easier for me in the long run. If you don't wish to do it that way, by all means do not. You can paint them each individually. For me, it's just easier to do it this way. So if you haven't cleaned your brush out, clean your brush out and dry it off, and then first, I'm going to outline everything with my brush. That way I can get up tight to the watermelon. Okay, so there's my outline, and it actually covered my whole entire inner rind part, the part that would be semi-white, like a really light green on a real watermelon. You could have always whited down that green a little bit if you wanted to do it more natural looking. However, for me, that worked just fine. So now I'm going to take one more piece of my little wedges that I cut in half. And I'm just going to go ahead and pounce all the way around the remaining white edge here. there is our completed first coat. Well, now we're gonna let that dry. Okay, so our first coat is dry. We're gonna go ahead with our brush and we're going to put the second coat, final coat on. And first we're just going to go ahead and paint in as close to that, the red of the fruit as we can. Nice smooth stroke all the way around it, picking up any lines of paint that come off the edge of our brush as much as we can. Just blend that down in. That paint will dry in a very noticeable line if you don't smooth it out. So I like to just wipe up with my brush that extra line there when I go backwards. So when you see me going backwards and swiping kind of quickly, that's what I'm doing. I'm just picking up that extra line of paint that rolls off the outer edge of our brush. Okay, so now I'm going to clean my brush again, and I'm going to go ahead and put this second coat of paint on the outside edge, and for that I'm just going to use my wedge again. All right, and we are going to take the tape off. All right, there's our second coat. And we're gonna let this dry before we do the final green, darker green stripe. Okay, so now I'm going to take my brush one last time and make sure that it's nice and clean and dried off. And I am going to use my dark green this time, which is my Shamrock Green. And I'm going to dip my paint, or dip my brush into it. And I'm going to skip the first one. And I'm going to go straight to the second one. And I'm just going to follow the line that is scored on there with the laser. And I'm going to do one side right up against the line, and then I'm going to paint the other side right up against the line, kind of creating like bumpers, right? Okay, so you can see what I did. And I'm going to fill all that in the middle, and I'm going to trace along the top here. So let me show you the trace along the top. Just like that. And then I'm just going to fill that in. Now this will need 2 coats. And I'm going to continue all the way around the side like that, doing every other one the same. I'm going to skip and go to the next one. Just like that. And then I'm going to fill that in as well. Okay. And then I'm going do the next one. Skip and go to the next one. I have to hold it up, so that's why it's not in camera, because I can't see it laying down on the table. Sorry about that, guys, but these eyes are just too old. Okay, so there's my next one. Remember, just making that border all the way around. It's like a bumper. And then filling it in. And then we're gonna do the next one. And we'll go back and do a second coat. Okay, and there's my stripes. Now, I am going to let this dry and I'm going to put another coat on it. Okay, I'm going to put my second coat on, still using my flat brush, and I'm just going to do the same process as before. Make my bumpers on the outside, swipe across the top, and then fill in. And work your way around, doing all of your stripes this way with the second coat of green. If you guys can hear that in the background, I'm not sure, but the landlord and somebody else are right outside my door, like standing right outside my door, and they're talking, I believe it's Hindi. I have the tint so dark on the door that they probably can't see that I'm sitting right on the other side of it. All right, so that second coat is like perfect. Really makes a difference. Okay, there we go. Our stripes are all done. And now we can take the tape off. And there is our watermelon. Just like that. But now I'm going to take a fine brush, but I'm going to outline the rind and the stripes with some black. If you have a paint marker, you could use a paint marker as well to do this. Make sure it's dry before you do this. And once again, it's something that I have to hold up to me so I can see what I'm doing. So I'm not sure how much of it you will see on the screen, but I'm just taking a fine brush and a little bit of black paint, and I'm going to just make lines. See that there? Now, if you're feeling really adventurous, you could do, before you did the outline, before you outlined it in black, if you wanted to, you could take the dark green and come up here and paint alternating squares. So you would have a dark green in this section, a dark green in this section, dark green, dark green, dark green, dark green. And so it would be alternated. And that would look really neat as well. I'm not going to do that, but it would look cool. This little sign here has so many different options. Like you could do so much with it. Black and white stripe lines, maybe a one layer of black and white in the middle section here, and the 2 shades of green on the outer section like we did. So many options. Dots, black and white checks with dots in the center of each one. Just so much you can do with this sign. You can see the stripe isn't that hard to do. Just a little paint on your brush at a time. Run it till it runs out. And then grab a little more paint, another dab of paint. Just do a nice fine line. Once again, if you have a black paint marker would work amazing. But I didn't want to cheat and use a black paint marker when not all of you will have one, but I know that you all have a fine brush. Okay, so there is my black outline. Now I'm going to go ahead and do black between each of these stripes. You see that? Once again, you do not have to do this. Totally up to you on whether or not you want to do the outlining. I just think it adds a little bit more to it. Now, if I would have thought about it and I would have done my rind, the little interior part before the flesh of the fruit there, a lighter shade of green, I probably wouldn't have done this. But I didn't absolutely love all of that lighter green there. So I thought, well, this will set it up a little bit better to my liking. And it's quick and easy. All right, just like that. Just like that. Oh, I like it. It's so cute. I'm still debating on whether or not I'm going to put some dots in here. My head is telling me to do white and black dots along this rind here. That's what my head's telling me to do. So I think I'm gonna listen. And I'm gonna take the end of my paintbrush, or my flat brush, the tip of it, the wrong end, so this end. And I'm just gonna dip it in my white and black paint, and I'm gonna put a dot. I'm gonna dot it all the way around, okay? We're gonna see what happens. So, dot, just like that. You guys can't even see that because I'm out of screen. There we go. Now I'm gonna leave a space. I'm gonna keep doing all my black. So I'm gonna skip space. Now you will have to dip in your paint every time because the tip of the brush will not hold enough to do more than one dot. And just try to space it evenly. Now your dots will take a little bit longer to dry because there's quite a bit of paint there. You're making like a bubble. So just let those dry. Don't be patient, or don't be impatient. Be patient. So cute. I love it. Now we're getting to the end here. You can see. Whoops, I just made a little bit of a mistake there. I will fix that. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing with the end of my paintbrush and my white paint. And I'm going to go in between these dots and put a white dot. Okay, so there are our dots. Oh, it's so cute. I love it. Okay, now those do have to dry, and those will take a little bit. So be patient, and then you'll be able to glue everything together. So let's let all that dry, and we'll come back in just a minute and we'll glue it. Okay, we are all dry. So now we are just going to dry fit all of our pieces on here. I don't like to glue anything until I have placed everything. I like to put everything on here where it's supposed to go. How cute is that? Let's rearrange this a bit so it's all spaced out good. Okay, and we've got our seeds. Okay, now you probably got a couple more seeds than what I'm showing you here. So you can put as many seeds on it as you want, or as few as you want. That's what I'm gonna do on mine. And then we've got to put our juice splashes on here. See why it's so important to dry fit things, so you know where everything's gonna go and you can make sure that you love it before you're committed to it with glue on it. So once that glue's on, that's it. Okay, now I'm gonna begin gluing each of these pieces. I'm gonna screw the red cap onto my super glue. It taps it automatically. And I'm gonna pick up one piece at a time and I'm gonna put some glue on the back of it, just like that. And then I'm gonna push it back down. Pressure activates super glue. Make sure your hands are clean, guys. You don't wanna get paint on your beautiful sign. Make sure that super glue stays right in the middle of your wood piece. If you get it too close to the edge, it will squish out, and once it's on your sign, you cannot get it off. So, and it does not cover up like with paint. It will not cover. So just a little bit of glue in the middle. And we're gonna do this with every single piece. Okay. And now we are going to do the same thing with the pieces up here. I'm gonna start with the spray. Alright, I gotta pull this down a little bit closer to me. It's getting quite a bit out of my reach. And next I'm gonna do my hello, only because it kind of defines the space of where my summer is gonna go, and it kind of sounds silly. There's no real logic. I just kind of like to box in my space. So that's what we're doing. We're boxing in that space. Okay, now I'm going to start on my letters, and I'm just going to start in the middle with the M's and work my way out. right, 2 more letters to go. Okay, and I did switch over. I ended up grabbing a small glue to see if there was going to be enough before we packed your kits with them, and it was plenty to do this whole thing, and I'm pretty sure I have enough in there to do several more letters. So I think there's still quite a bit left in this tube, so there was plenty in that tiny little bugger to do this sign. So now we are going to put our hanger on, and we are going to build our bow, and then our sign is going to be complete. So we're going to take the end of our jute, and we're going to come from the back forward up through, and then we're going to go back down the other one, the other hole. And then I'm just going to grab myself make myself a handle, however high I want that handle to go, which is right about there. I'm gonna bring my ends together. Need to flip this around so you can see. I'm gonna bring my ends up and together, pinch them, and then I'm gonna tie an overhand knot at the point where I pinched them. Now, I didn't give myself a lot of room on that. You guys give yourself a little bit more room on your string. I'm gonna hit the very tip of it right there, but you see that where I barely had enough there, but I made it work. There was no reason when I had all that extra, like, no reason, but I was too lazy to even it out. I'm gonna pull this so the knot is at the back of one of the holes, and then I'm gonna bring the 2 strings up together, and there's my hanger. And now I'm gonna build my bow. So let's build our bow cluster real quick. You've got 2 zip ties, and you've got 2 lengths of ribbon. So you're gonna bring the ends of your ribbons together. So I've got them both sandwiched together like this. I'm gonna fold them up like a taco. And I'm gonna take my scissor, and I'm gonna cut the end from the folded up and out to the corners. So I've got a dovetail. I'm gonna do the same on the other side, folding them up like a taco, cutting from the folded edge up and out. And there we've got our 4 pieces of ribbon now. And I'm going to lay them in an X on my table, alternating colors like that. Just like that there. Now remember, your ribbons are probably not going to match the ones that I have here because we had to place the order before the tutorial. Okay, so now I'm going to take that zip tie and lay it across all of them. And I'm going to flip it over to the back, and I'm going to cinch it. I'm going to cinch it almost all the way closed, but I'm going to give myself a little bit of room to maneuver my ribbons around. So I'm going to flip it over and look at it from the front, and I'm just going to move those ribbons how I want them. And then I'm going to take my other zip tie, and I'm going to run it underneath the big zip tie in the back. You see that? And I'm going to hold it down, and I'm going to zip the big zip tie all the way closed, cinch it all the way closed, trim it off, and then you have your bow cluster. And this zip tie you're going to hook around the hanger. All right, so here's your hanger. Just choose which side you want it on, and take your bow in your zip tie and wrap the zip tie all the way around both of the pieces of the jute hanger. You see that? Here's the jute hanger. Here's the zip tie. And I'm going to cinch it together, and I'm going to tighten it down, and I'm going to trim off that extra, and then there is my sign. All Looks just like it did in the opening, right? There we go. There it is, and you are done. So now you can hang that with pride on your front door or in your office. Liven up some space while we pray for summer to finally arrive. If you're doing this tutorial, if you're painting this project right on time, it's not yet spring because Michigan has decided that it's not ready to give us warm weather. And if you're one of our customers that are out of the state of Michigan, well, I'm sure you've had nice warm weather for quite some time now, and all of us Michiganders are envious. So, all right, guys, thanks so much. Hope you enjoyed this sign. I think it turned out so cute. I love, love, love it. We want to see yours posted in the VIP group, so get those projects done and get them posted. Thanks, guys.